Today we're making a digital planner. I'm going to take you all the way from concept through creation so that you don't miss any steps. Keep watching because there are going to be tons of tips and tricks to avoid time-wasting mistakes like I did when I was creating my first digital planner. So, if you want to avoid some of those mistakes, keep watching because it's going to be a lifesaver. In the first part of this episode, we're going to go over some basic concepts so that you can start visualizing what your planner is going to look like. And in the second part, we'll jump into InDesign and I will take you step by step through how to create the planner to get it ready to sell. Let's go. Digital planners are interactive PDFs. These are created for use in note-taking apps like GoodNotes, Zodo, NoteShelf, notably. There's so many more of them. GoodNotes does seem to be the most popular one, however. What makes these PDFs interactive are the hyperlinks that are embedded in them. These allow you to click in different areas and go straight to other pages. There are many types of planners, from really simple to more complex. There are planners that are more on the aesthetically pleasing side, and some that are all about functionality with probably thousands of hyperlinks throughout. You can have planners that are more of a traditional weekly, daily, monthly planner, or you can have specialized planners like travel journals and budget planners and health and fitness planners and so many more. When trying to decide what type of planner you want to create, you should first start with a little bit of research. The easiest thing to do is go right to Google. You can Google digital planners and you'll have tons of pictures show up. You can go to the shopping tab, you can go to Etsy, you can go to Amazon, you can even go to Canva to find some pages on there to just kind of start gathering some ideas of what type of planner you might want to create and what types of pages you might want to have inside of them. It is important that you understand you are only looking for ideas and you are not looking to copy anybody. Some things that you're going to want to think about as you're looking at these other digital planners that you're going to need to decide on is, do you want to have it portrait view or do you want to have it landscape view? Do you want to have it simple and more neutral, or do you want to have it bright and colorful? Do you want it plain with no kinds of graphics, or do you want fun graphics all over it? Do you want to have a spine? There are tons of possibilities. So as you're doing your research and looking at these, just kind of take notes in your head of what you like and what looks good to you and what you might want to throw into your planner. Now that you've decided what planner you want, you can now start to decide what pages that you want to have within your planner. Okay, you also want to decide what sections you might want to have in your planner. This will help you pick what pages you're going to want to have in there also. You can have different sections. Obviously, other than the weekly, monthly, daily, you can have budgeting sections and note-taking sections and maybe fitness tracking sections and goal setting sections. So you really just to sit there and do like a brain dump and write down all the different types of things that you would like to have in your planner. I usually find it helpful to write everything down. Don't necessarily try to do it in order of section. You can always go back and rearrange these later, but just get it all out there on paper. Now you really want to start mapping out and visualizing the way you want your planner to look. What kind of order you would want pages to be in. Even maybe think about how you would like things hyperlinked. You will have to design each page. However, you want to make sure you keep in mind a general theme that you're going for. That could be something like certain graphics or certain colors or certain fonts, but you also want to think about how your layouts look. Are they cohesive? You're doing rounded corners on boxes on one page. You don't necessarily on the next page want to have pointy corner boxes or circles instead, or maybe have dotted lines on one page and then you have solid lines on another. It might, after a while, start to feel like it's pieced together from other places instead of one cohesive planner. There are a few different types of programs out there that you could use to create digital planners. They are going to range in price and ease of use and in features. So I'm going to go over each before I jump into InDesign, where I'm going to actually show you how to create one in there. First app I'm going to talk about is Keynote. Pros for Keynote: can be used on any Apple device. It's free to use. You can quickly make pages. And there are lots of tutorials online that you can find on how to use, and I mean tons. Now let's look at some cons. It can be a very manual process to make changes. It's limited in features compared to more professional programs like InDesign. It is not made for creating these types of documents. It is comparable to PowerPoint. It's a presentation software. The next program I'm going to talk about is Procreate. You can create beautiful pages with Procreate. Some pros using Procreate is you can create more heavily designed, focused pages. It is great for a more realistic, stylized planner. It's easy to draw and work with layers. And it's cheap at only $9.99 one-time fee. Some of the cons of using Procreate are you cannot create the finished product with this app. You will need to use another app like Keynote or InDesign to create the actual hyperlinked PDF. And it's only available on iPads. Next is InDesign. This, of course, is my choice of programs. It is a professional program that's made exactly for this type of document, large documents. It's very customizable, and it offers tools such as paragraph and character styles to make your workflow a breeze. I will get into this in just a few more minutes. Now the cons for InDesign. It's a much more expensive option. It's $20 per month for annual, $32 for monthly, or $58 monthly for the entire Creative Cloud. It also has a steep learning curve and can be daunting at first with all of the tools and options. Okay, while this is not an actual planner creating app, I do want to talk about GoodNotes. I do think it's important that you download at least one of the different types of note-taking apps, because you're gonna need to play with your planner in there, make sure it's working, make sure the functionality is what you're wanting it to be. But I would highly suggest that you use GoodNotes because that is the most popular one. Most likely, if you're creating digital stickers to go with these digital planners, you're gonna wanna create GoodNotes sticker books. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer, but you do need to make sure that you have at least one of these to try out your planner before you try to sell it to anybody. This program is made for documents like this, and because of that, there's so many tools within it that are there to help you deal with however many pages that you're making. I will show you the most important tools you need to know for designing your planner so that you're not bogged down with everything that's available in InDesign, because it's a lot. And I'll show you over in the next step. Many of these features are going to allow making changes down the road so much easier. If you're creating a planner to sell for a business, then most likely you're planning on making more than one planner. I mean, there's so many different variations to planners that you can create. However, you don't necessarily need to be redesigning them from scratch. There's certain pages you could reuse. Maybe you're changing colors, maybe you're changing fonts, maybe you're changing some graphics, maybe you're just changing it from landscape to portrait view. There's so many ways you can change it and create variations to, one planner, and before you know it, you have 20 planners out there to sell. But if you're doing that in another more manual app like Keynote, it's gonna take a lot longer to make these simple changes, where in InDesign, a lot of these tools are created for just making it once, and that's it, changing the whole document. And I will definitely show you these in the next part when we jump into InDesign, but I really want you to keep that in mind. So if you're on the fence about using InDesign or using a much cheaper version or program, then I urge you to at least watch the tutorial part, and there you can kind of see the different things that InDesign can do, and that might help you make your decision. And it's up to you. I'm not getting paid by Adobe to promote this. I'm just passionate about the fact that if you're trying to be professional, this makes the most sense. Just my opinion. Another change that this can help you with that you might want to consider down the road, if it's not already what you're currently doing, but if you start with digital planners and let's say you definitely want to expand and now you want to expand into printable planners that people can print out and you can offer in different sizes, so they can either put them in a 3-ring binder or they can put them in one of those disc bound the planners like the Happy Planner. And that's a pretty easy thing to do if you already have it created and you're just going to be changing kind of the design layout a little bit. It's a fairly easy thing to do. You're not going to be able to do that if you've created it in Keynote or if in Procreate or anywhere else. You're going to have to basically start from scratch to be able to do that. These are just things I really, really want you to keep in mind. Now, let's get into creating our digital planner. Okay, so now that we're here in InDesign, what we need to do is create a new file. Just come over here and click Create New File. This is my defaults that come up. Yours may look different, but I do like to go ahead and change it to pixels. Now, there is a minimum size that you should really go with. GoodNotes suggests this minimum size, and since that's the most popular program that people use, I would go ahead and go with that. Their minimums for landscape would be 650 pixels by 406 pixels. And if you're wanting to create a portrait view planner, the minimum is 455 pixels by 488 pixels. I prefer to use a little bit bigger. The more pixels, the better resolution you have, but also the bigger the file size. So I like a little bit of a better resolution, but you don't want to go too large because it's going to be a very lengthy document. Depending on the details of your planner, you may want to start with a smaller size, create a test, bring it into the app and see how it looks when you zoom in. And then if you need to make it bigger, you can make it bigger. Larger file sizes may fill a customer's storage much faster, and it can cause problems in GoodNotes with lag if it's way too big. Now, I have created my first planner and brought it into GoodNotes and found that this size worked best for me. So what I will be using today is 1200 pixels by 768. If I was creating a portrait, it would be 1530 by 1960. You're also going to want this to be one page at a time. You may have 2 facing pages if you were doing this for print. That way it would print front and back, but this is not for print, so we don't want that. These are how my margins come up. I just leave it that way, again, because we're not printing this. It's not really that important. You can either have them like this or just leave whatever default you have. You can come up here and you can give your title. That's going to be what you're saving it as, and then go ahead and click Create. And now you've created your first document and we're ready to go. I actually have one started, so I'm going to jump over here. The main components we're going to go over that you're definitely going to need for your planner are the cover, the planner background, our section tabs, and then there's the main planner contents. The first thing I like to do is get my parent pages set up. This will make everything so much easier. I always start from the back of the planner page moving forward. First page is going to be the background. In front of that will be the actual pages of the planner with all of the tabs and our spine, if you're using a spine. And then in front of that is where we'll actually add the details on the pages themselves. When you, let me shoot back over here and show you what it looks like when you first start. You're going to always have this that says none here, so that you can add a blank page if you ever need to or want to. And then it's going to automatically have this parent A. So coming back over here, let's go to the parent A. This is the one that I'm going to make the actual background. You can name this whatever you want to name this. In order to change the name of it, you're going to come over here with this selected, double click on it, right click, and we're going to go to Parent Options for A Parent. And now you can change the prefix if you want. You can change the name. I'm just going to change this to background image. And we do not want to do this yet. We're just going to leave this as none. I will explain this when we get to the next page. And you can go ahead and click OK. And essentially all that's doing is changing the name. So this is what I want my background to be. You can leave this white if you want to. You don't have to put anything on the background, in which case I would just skip this one altogether in case, except for if you think that down the road you may want to add that in. So let's go ahead and just add an image. I have some images here. I'm going to go ahead and add this as the background. Okay. Now, I do like this wood part, but I don't necessarily want the flowers in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this so that the flowers are outside of our box here, our outside box. To do this, to resize the image, you have to hold Control before you can drag. Otherwise, you're just going to drag that little outside box. But to actually resize the picture, just hold Control and then drag it, and it will resize the picture. And again, I want this to be outside of the flowers, to be outside of that. I don't need to see the flowers. All right, and so now if you don't want all this extra here, you won't be able to see it. Here's a tip. If you ever want to see an actual preview of what it's going to look like when it's exported, you would just hit W and it's going to get rid of everything else and only show you what it will be exported as. So this is all you will see for the background. So I'm going to hit W again and it will bring it back. And if you want to get rid of this just so it's not taking up space or it's distracting, now is when you can go ahead and resize this without hitting Control. You just click, hover over the node until you have the double arrow, and then you just slide it over to the edge and it will get rid of everything. And that's how you are going to crop images here. I'm just going to bring it to the edge. It may be hard to see that little black line, but that's what we're going to use, is that black line. Hit W to see what it looks like. Okay, that's good. Okay, so that's now our background image here. So next we're going to want to create our background, our planner background, our planner empty pages with all of our tabs, which would end up looking something like this. We're not going to do anything that complicated right now. So while you're clicked in here, we're going to insert a page. This page is going to be inserted after whichever page that you're clicked on in the parents panel up here. So you're going to go ahead, if you're clicked in here, and you're going to hit this plus, and that's going to create a new page right under it. And we want to right click and we want to go to parent options, and we're going to change the name, and I'm going to call this planner background. I'm going to call it planner background 2 because I already have one here. And now is when we're going to use this based on parent. And what we want to do is we want to reference that background image page that we created over there. And when we do that, it's going to add that to our page. However, you'll notice that it's not clickable. You can't move it. You can't adjust it. If you want to adjust it, change out the background picture, you would come to the other parent page and then you can move it and you can adjust it. And I will show you another way later. But first, let's create our planner base here. Okay, so looking back at the example I have here, you will see we have tabs, we have the paper, we have the spine, and then we also have behind here is the cover. Just showing just a little bit so that it looks like it would if you were to open an actual planner. So let's go back to here and let's start with we're going to start with the cover pages all the way in the back and work our way forward. In order to create those pages, we're going to come down here to the rectangle tool. And to create the rectangle, you just simply have to click and drag out a box. Say maybe close to halfway. You can always resize it later. See it, there is no fill, so we want to go up here and we want to create a fill and just pick a random color. And I guess we're going to make a purple planner. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to round the corners. And to do that, you're going to click on this little yellow node here. And it's going to give us some little diamonds on the corners. If you click and drag one of those, it's going to round the corners. We'll round all 4 corners. And now we want to make a copy. So the easiest way to make a copy is to hold down Alt and click and drag with your mouse, and that will create a copy. Hold down the Shift and it will keep that perfectly in line for you. So we're just gonna go ahead and line that up really close. And there we go. Now we have a copy of that and we have our 2 covers. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of a drop shadow just so that it looks like it's sitting on a desk behind it. We'll drag a box over both to select and then right click, and we're going to go down to effects and we're going to go to drop shadow. And now here where you can adjust that drop shadow. Right now it looks like it's sitting way above the desk and we don't want that. So maybe we want to bring the opacity down just a little bit. Maybe not. Maybe we bring the size down. And then we have the distance. The distance is how far out, which you can think of that as how far away from the object behind it. So we really just want a slight little bit. That looks good. Just click OK. So the next thing that we want to add is the actual pages on top, the white pages. And we're going to do this the same way we just did the covers. Come down here to the rectangle tool. We are going to draw a box slightly smaller than the cover because we want that to stick out. And then we can come back to the fill and we can fill it with white. And now we have our page. You can make the pages any color you want. I just find white is the simplest and most common. So we're going to do the same thing to copy this page. We're going to hold Alt, we're going to hold Shift, and then drag over with our mouse. And there we go. We have both of our pages. We're going to go ahead and add a little bit of drop shadow to these as well. So select the 2. If you don't want to drag a box over because you'll select those covers in the back. So to select more than one item, click the first item, hold Shift, click the next item, and now those are both selected. We're going to right click, Effects, Drop Shadow, and we're going to do the same thing over here. And we are getting there. So the next thing I want to add is go ahead and add the spine between. So I'm going to go to File and Place, and here's my spine. Now I purchased these on Etsy. You can find these graphics in anywhere you buy other graphics that you use, like maybe you can find them on Creative Market, on Etsy, on Envato Elements, and places like that. You can make them yourself. I'm not very good at it myself, so I just went ahead and purchased them. You could find tons of stuff like this, little pens if you wanted to add those for something extra. You can get really creative with it. But I'm just going to go ahead and drag this spine in here. And I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, so obviously we can see that this is a little bit big. So we're going to resize, and just remember that when you want to resize an image like this in InDesign, you're going to have to hit Control in order to size the actual image. Okay, the only thing we have left to do on this page is to add some tabs. So to do that, we are going to come over here to the rectangle tool again, and we are just going to drag out a little box about the size that we might want for the tab. Let's fill it with whatever color you want. ahead and fill it with that. Again, make sure you hit the selection tool to get off of the rectangle tool. And I like to have my tab corners curved a bit. So we're gonna do like we did before. We're gonna click the yellow box. We're gonna grab onto one of these nodes and pull it in until the corner's curved. Maybe that's a little too much. That's probably pretty good. All right, so when you click off, and now you can see we have our tab here, and it's actually probably way too big. Let's make that a little bit smaller. Now we have our first tab, but it's not in the right spot because it's sitting above our paper, which is something that we don't want. So what we need to do is we need to come over to this layers panel. And with this box selected, you can see the little blue box here indicates that this is that object and that's on the top layer here. What we need to do is we need to move it behind this layer. So click here and this will show us where that layer is. So now we just need to move this layer below that layer. It's pretty simple. Click and hold and then drag it down until it's below that layer. And now it's sitting behind our paper the way we want it to. Still looks like it's sticking out a little too much. Just that a little bit. Okay, and so now we just need to add text. So we're gonna come over here to the text tool and we're gonna just drag a little box and we're gonna type December because this is our bottom tab, which is gonna be December. Let's go ahead and let's make that a little bit bigger. Let's change the font. Change it to that one. That's the one I like. Okay, we can still adjust this in a minute. Let's actually center this in the box. It just makes it easier to line it up over here. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to get this text facing in the right direction. So we need to turn the text box. In order to do that, you just hover your mouse over one of the corners, any one of the corners, until your cursor turns into a little double-sided curved arrow. Once you have that cursor, then you can just click and hold with the mouse, and now as you move your mouse, it will turn this around. If you hold shift, it will keep it at only exact 45-degree angles, so you can make sure that it is straight up and down, and then just release. So now we just want to maybe adjust this a little bit, make sure the text is in the middle where we want it. And if you want to resize it at that point, you can do that as well. But now that we have our first tab done, we need to make copies. So the first thing we're going to do is select both the text and the box. And we are going to hold Alt and Shift and drag the box up. And I like to have it overlap a little bit. So let's go ahead and release, and it's overlapping slightly, and that's good to go. Make sure you leave those selected because now it's in order to make the next 10 copies and ensure that they're perfectly evenly spaced, we are going to use something called step and repeat. So again, make sure those two are still selected, the text and the tab, and then come over to edit and step and repeat. And here we're able to tell them exactly how many times we want to step and repeat. We already have our first and second one, so we need 10 more. Change this to 10. If you hit tab, if your preview is selected, you'll be able to see what that will look like. So we're just gonna go ahead and hit OK. And now, just like that, it's made all copies perfectly spaced. But you may notice now that we have a gap here. So our tabs are not the right size. This is a really, really easy fix. What you're gonna do here is you are going to highlight all of these text and tabs, but just make sure that you don't get the cover or the page. You just wanna make sure you're selecting the tabs and the text only. And now all of that is selected. Let's zoom in up here, and we are going to find this little center node. And when you'll know you found it, because when you hover over it, you're gonna get that double-sided arrow. And once you do, you're gonna click, hold, and drag up to the top where you want your first one to start, and it will have evenly enlarged and distributed all of your tabs. Now all that's left to do is to go into each of these and change to get out of the text tool, come back to the selection tool. And now we can zoom out and see what it looks like. We have one last thing to add to these tabs, and we want to add some drop shadows that'll help these to stand out and you can see them sticking apart. If you want to add drop shadow to all of them at the same time, you go ahead and select all of the boxes. Now for this instance, you want to be careful just along the edge because you only want to grab the boxes in the back. You do not want to grab the text boxes. So with all of those selected, right click, come down to effects and drop shadow. And obviously this drop shadow is way too big. We're going to go ahead and lower the distance a bit. Oh, I think that looks pretty good there. And now we have our drop shadow, and see how nice that looks. You can now see the distinct individual tags. You don't even have to change the colors, but you still can if you want. And that's it. That's the back of our cover. If you want to add more tabs along the top or the other side, you would just continue with the same process. Okay, before we get into creating our actual pages, I just quickly wanted to show you how you could create a cover for the planner. It's really just the first page. I have one created here. If you're following along, you would notice that this actual first page, this is the actual document here. It will automatically start with the first page, and it should have this background on there automatically. So that's fine. All I did was take my coil. It's a different style coil, so it only has the holes on one side. And then I simply just, you can take whatever cover you were going to use, wherever you designed it, whether it's Illustrator or Procreate. I actually think I just threw this one together in here. And you just simply do that, add some drop shadows, really easy. Maybe for the cover you want to add some, pens or a stapler or a cup of coffee or something else to dress this up. That's totally up to you. This is just the cover that people are going to see when they're in their program and they're looking at their documents on their main screen. And this is what they'll see when they're in the planner. They're really not going to see this. So it's just to make it look cute, essentially. But let's get to the important pages. And that is going to be our inside pages. Next, we're going to create the basic pages that you would want to use over and over again in your planner. We're going to do this by creating parent pages of them. Now, I do tend to create a parent page for pretty much everything, and the purpose of this for me is that if I want to then create another planner from that one, and maybe I want to exclude a page, and then on the next one I want to add it back in, having the parent pages just makes it a lot easier to add and remove pages from your actual document. However, you don't really need to do this. If there's a page you know you're only going to use once and you don't feel the need to create the parent page, it's totally up to you. That's just my preference. There is no limit to how many parent pages that you can make. Here are some examples of pages that you might want to consider adding into your planner. Index or instruction pages, monthly dashboards, monthly view, weekly view, daily view, and other sections like finances, habits, gratitude, wellness, etc. I'm going to show you how to create two different pages. We're going to do a monthly calendar and a weekly layout view. While we create the first page, the monthly calendar, I'm going to go through and show you all of the tools that I think that you really need to know for this application, because you don't need to know all of them, but I do want to make sure I hit on all the important ones that are going to make your life a lot easier. But because InDesign has so many features, I seriously could create an entire series around just how to use InDesign for creating both digital and physical planners and printable planners. So if that's something that you guys think you might be interested in, leave me a comment and let me know, because it is something I'm considering doing, but it could be pretty time consuming. So I just would like to see if anybody is interested in it. So let me know in the comments if this is something that you'd be interested in. Now, let's head over into the computer and start in InDesign and creating our first pages. Okay, so we are ready to start working on our monthly calendar. And what we're gonna do here is this is gonna be our first page we're creating. So make sure you're in your parent pages over here on the right, and double click on your planner background so that we can add a page right after that. And you're going to hit the plus. Okay, so it's just going to insert the blank page. We now want to right click and go to parent options so that we can apply our planner background to this page. And now we have our planner background. Again, none of this is going to be editable at this point. So now I'm going to show you the most important tools that you need to know, and you can create just about all of your pages with just these few tools. The first thing I'm going to show you today is creating a table. We are creating the table to create the actual calendar itself. So to do that, we're going to go up to Table, Create Table, and then we are going to put in the rows, 7 rows and 5 columns. And now you're just going to click and drag out about where you want that to be. And it's going to automatically make all columns and rows even. Okay, so I got to show you a few tips here on how to resize and move columns around, because it can get a little bit tricky. First, you want to make sure if you are for some reason outside of this table now, in order to get into it and edit it, you just have to double click inside somewhere. To resize the whole table, come over to the side here until you get your double arrow. And then to resize the whole thing, you're going to hit Shift. And that's going to resize everything evenly. Okay. If you were to just grab the side, it's only going to resize that one column. And it will be the same for the bottom. If I just drag it without hitting Shift, it's only resizing one column. If I hold Shift, it's going to resize the entire table. If you want to move lines inside, if you click and drag, it's going to drag up that whole table, anything underneath the box you're trying to drag. If you want to just resize the one column, you hold Shift, and that will allow you to resize, or row rather, will allow you to resize the one row. It might be hard to remember, just play around with it. If you're trying to resize something and it's not doing what you want, just go ahead and hold Shift and see what that does, because that's probably going to be the solution. I still mess it up all the time. There is one thing I want to note. I'm going to click out of here, and when we look at this box, you're going to notice, and this is just like the images, that there is this image box on the outside. If you resize this box, just like the images, by itself, it moved it up, but you see you have this gap here. It didn't actually make the table any larger. It is just resizing this box. And that is an issue you might run into if you're not clicked in the actual table when you go to try to resize it. On occasion, you might have added something or changed the size to something, and yet it appears that it has disappeared. If that's the case, it may be because you are outside of this text box area. You may just need to extend that out and make it bigger, and then your new columns and rows will appear. Just keep that in mind whenever you're adjusting the tables. So what I really want to do is I want to make this row and this column here smaller, because I want to have the days of the week up here, and I want to have the number of the week here. So in order to do that, we're first going to drag, hold Shift and drag until this box is about the size we want it to be at. And that looks about good to me. And then we're gonna go ahead and do the same with the column here. And that looks about good to me. And so what you'll see now is we have this box is way bigger than these, and these boxes are way bigger than this. And we want to fix that. We want to make that all evenly distributed for the remainder of the columns and rows. So in order to do that, you're gonna bring your cursor up here until you see this arrow, and that's the arrow that's going to select an entire column or an entire row. If you want to select all of them, you just click, hold, and drag and select as many as you want. And now that we have all of these columns selected, we are going to right click, and keep in mind this first column is not selected because we don't want to change that size. You right click, and then you're going to come down to distribute columns evenly. And now it's going to make all of those columns perfectly even. And now we want to do the same thing with the rows. We're going to select all the rows but the top one, highlight them all, right click, distribute rows evenly. And now they're all perfectly even. Okay, so let's go in here and let's start adding some days of the week. So you double click in here, and let's go ahead and we'll start with Sunday. Oops, Sunday. And if you want to move to the next box over, you just hit tab and that will move you right over. Of course, you could click in there, but tab will do the same thing. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And now over here, what I wanted to do is I wanted to add numbers for the week. I'm just gonna have numbers. You could do week 1, week 2, but I'm just gonna add in 1. Now if you tab here, tab goes from left to right, so you'd have to tab all the way over and it will bring it back down here. Okay, so now we have all of our weekdays and our numbers in here, and now we just have to format this text the way we want it to. When formatting tables, there are different ways that you need to format different things. You can format the entire table, you can format just cells, you can format just fonts. So I want to show you first how to format the table. You have to have the table selected. So if you hover over a corner here, over the left corner, the left top corner, you'll get an arrow pointing diagonally. That is to select the entire table. So just click once you see that, and now your whole table is selected. And now you can right click and you will have this option here for table options. I'll get into cell options in a minute, but let's look at our different table options. Let's go over here to table setup, and you can see in here all the different options that you have for your table. You can change the rows and columns here. You can add headers and footers. You can change the border type. That's your stroke. And you can change your table spacing. If we come over here to row strokes, you can actually change the strokes of the lines. So we'd be looking at these lines here. You can say every other row, you can say every second row, you can create custom rows, and you can change the font size and the color and so on and so forth for each row. The same goes for the columns, same thing, but we're talking about the vertical lines here. And then you have the fills. If you wanted to create different fill colors, say you wanted every other one to be pink, you can choose every other row, and then you can choose pink, and every other row would be pink. You can't see it now because it's highlighted, but if I click off of that, you can see every other row is pink. Let's go back and to table setup. And then you have headers and footers, which you can add if you would like. We just kind of created our own like that. But these are all the different options, and these are just for the actual table itself. So if we want to adjust our fonts and settings for just particular cells, that's when we're going to go to cell options. So with this table still highlighted, right click, and we're going to go to cell options. You can pick any one of these. It's going to bring up the same kind of box that that one did, with all of the options up top. So now we're looking at text here. Here's where we can decide we want the text centered. This is vertical. If you want the text centered horizontally, you would do that in the text options. But this is where we can decide, hey, we want these vertically centered, line center, and it's now going to move our text in the center. If you have just certain boxes selected, say you only wanted the top and bottom selected, which is what we are going to end up doing because we want the numbers in the corners here and not centered, you would just have those boxes selected and you would be able to change these based on that. You can change our cell insets, which I'll show you when we actually add our numbers to our calendar here. We have graphics if you're inserting graphics. We have the strokes for the cells around it. Again, I'm going to show you how to change that up here when we get to that part, but you can do that in here as well. It might be a little bit easier because this box is bigger than that box. Rows and columns. Well, here's where you can, when you come over to rows and columns, you can make rows and columns an exact size if that's what you would like. This one says at least. You would just click the down arrow, say exactly, and then you would put in the size that you want, and then it would change it. One thing to note, if you see what I just did, about Adobe products, whether that's InDesign or Illustrator, is that no matter how this is set up as a form of measurement, whatever measurements these are set up as, whether they're pixels or inches or millimeters, you can actually put in whatever form you want. So if I want to say 1 inch, it will automatically convert it. If I want to say 8 millimeters, it will automatically convert to that form of measurement. So you don't need to know exactly what this is in order to resize things. And that goes for anywhere else where you see sizes. And then we have diagonal lines. If you want to add some diagonal lines into your boxes, you can do that as well. So let's go ahead and cancel this so we don't mess that up. Okay, so now we want to go back and we want to resize just this column or row and just this column. So first let's highlight these. We're going to right click. We're going to say cell options and text. And now we are going to make these centered because we want these centered here. And we're going to hit OK. Now if we want them centered horizontally, like I said before, that's when you're going to use your text options up here. Okay, so we'll center them here. Let's go ahead and adjust this column. And we're going to do the same, right click, cell options, text. And now we're going to align these centered as well. Click OK, and then we're going to center them there. Now we're going to go ahead and let's go back and let's change the font to something else. Let's make the font a bit bigger because it's kind of small. I'm going to do the same thing over here. It's kind of like this typewriter look. We'll make them a little bit bigger until it's as big as we like. And that's as simple as that. Just highlight and then you change the text just like you would any other text. Okay, I'm just going to show you really quick on how you can adjust these strokes on either side. So for example, let's highlight this box here, and we don't need these 2 lines on this side. We want to get rid of those. So you will see this little box up here is going to show me the lines, and you only want the lines highlighted in blue that you actually want to adjust. We want to keep these 2 lines. So we're going to go ahead and click these 2 lines off. And we are left with these 2 here that we want to get rid of. So we just go ahead and we can change the stroke to 0 point, or we can change the color to none. Either way will have the same effect. So now when we click on our select tool to get out of that, you can see here Well, it looks like there's still lines because of the box, but if we hit W to see what the exported file looks like, the line is gone. We have no lines there in the corner. Let's go back, W again. Okay, so let's also see if we have multiple highlighted. You're gonna see that box changes. You now have one in the center, which will represent these center lines, okay? So let's click all these off. Let's say we want to get rid of the lines in the center here. Just click that center line. That's the one we're working on. We're going to say 0 font or 0 point. Now let's say I want to add a thicker box all the way around the outside of these guys. Let's turn off the middle and we just want to click the outside boxes. It's a little finicky, it's a little bit small. We have just the outside boxes selected. Now we're gonna go ahead and let's say we can change it to pink, and then, you know, you can change the line type as well. Maybe you wanted to make, maybe you want to have a right slab. Let's go with that. Let's see how that looks. Let's hit W so we can see what we're looking at. The slabs are apparently very tiny, so you can't really see them. They just kind of look like a solid line, but you get the idea. So now we have just the top border here and nothing in the middle. And you can do this with any of the boxes you have selected. Just remember that the inside lines here are going to be these inside lines are going to be here, and you only want to have selected what you're actually wanting to change when you're working on this. So let's go ahead and go back and put that back where it was because we want to leave it like that. The last thing we need to do here is we need to add our numbers in. If you click in here and you add your numbers in, you're gonna see that they are really kind of shoved up in the corner there. We can make the text bigger, the font a little bit bigger, but it's kind of close to the corner. You may not want that, or maybe you want it in the left corner. So let's make some adjustments to these numbers. We are going to make adjustments to the cells. Well, actually, if you want to move the numbers over, you just write a line. But we want a little bit more space here in the corner. So if you right click and we'll go to cell options and go ahead, you can just hit text here and you can see that's what these cell insets are. This is going to be how close it is to the actual corner. If we move this up, you see that it's moving the text down because this is the top, so it's from the top. The higher you make that number, the farther away from the edge that text is going to be. If you're adjusting this and all of them are adjusting at the same time, that just means that you have them all linked here and they're all going to automatically be adjusted the same amount. So I think that looks good. It gives us a little bit more space here. We can go ahead and click OK, and that is how you can adjust where those numbers are in the cells. Okay, as you can probably tell, we only have 4 days of the week added in here, and that is because I want to go ahead and I want to copy and paste this over to the other page and make adjustments so that I don't have to start all over again from scratch and do each of them separately. So what we're going to do is we are going to select our table, hold Alt and Shift, click and drag, and we are going to make a copy over here. Now, let's make some adjustments to this side because obviously we only need 3 days, and we also don't need this column here because it's going to be lined up like that. Let's go ahead and let's highlight this. We're going to right click and we are going to delete the entire column. And now it shifted everything over, but it didn't change the size, so that's fine. And now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna delete this column as well because we don't need this one. Delete column. Okay, so now we're left with our other 3 days of the week. Let's go ahead and add in these days. Okay, now we have our days of the week, and now we'd have to adjust our numbers here. So now what I want to show you is how you can use tables to create a lined note section. So what we're going to do is go up here to table, create table, and now we want our rows to be 25. We'll just start with 25 and then 1 column. Click OK, and now we're going to click and we're going to drag our table in this section here where we want our notes to be. And now it's going to create lines. So now what we want to do is we want to make all of our lines exactly 7 millimeters apart. And we're going to do that by making our cells exactly 7 millimeters wide or high. So you want to highlight, all of the cells, the whole column, right click, cell options, and we're going to go down here to rows and columns. And here's what I was talking about before, where we can make rows or columns an exact size. We've already made our column the size we want, so we're looking at rows. You want to change that to exactly, and then we're going to come here and we're going to say 7 millimeters. Hit tab, we'll show you how it is. Looks on the side for the preview. Make sure you have that. If you want to see the preview, make sure this is clicked. Hit OK. And now we have them 7 millimeters, but if you can see now, they don't go all the way to the bottom. So to easily add more rows, you can just click and double click until your cursor is in the bottom row and then simply hit tab. And that will create however many more rows you want. So now that we have the right number of boxes and the right size, we want to turn this into just lines. We don't want to have this box around the outside. And there are actually 2 different methods you can use to create just lines from a table like this. And I'm going to show you both. The first one, let's click in here. The first one I'm going to show you is how to actually create underlines within these cells. And to do this, you want to be clicked in the first cell. And then we want to go over to the underline icon up here in the top. But we want to make sure we hold alternate when we click on it so that it brings up the dialog box so that we can go ahead and make some adjustments to the settings. So hold Alt, click on that, and now we're going to have the underline options box. And from here we can click underline and we can decide what weight we want the underline to be. Let's say we want it to be a 1/2 point. We can decide if we want an offset, which we don't. We can decide on the color. Maybe we want it to be just gray and not black. And we can also change, the type of line that it is. And once we're happy with that, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. So in the first box here, in order to get our line across, because this is meant to underline text, you're simply going to hold the space bar. And that is going to create a line all the way across. Now, of course, you could tab down and you can do that all the way down, but it's really unnecessary. All you need to do is copy what's in this box, highlight the rest, and then paste. And now we have those lines in every box. But now we have all these double lines. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of the strokes on the outside of this table. So let's select the whole table. We're going to come up here, make sure all of these little lines are lit up in blue, and then we're going to go ahead and turn off all of the table strokes. And now we're left with just the lines. Now I'm going to undo all of this and show you how you can do this in the other method. And basically all we need to do is get rid of these lines on the sides. And then we're left with just the strokes for the rest of the table. And let's go ahead and highlight, or you can click up there like that. and let's make sure that we have only the left and right sides selected. The other three will not be lit up in blue, just the sides here. And you can click 0 point, and then we are left with just the lines. Using the table method with just adjusting the strokes on the outside and not creating the underlines inside actually works perfectly fine for here. In most cases, I think it will work perfectly fine for what you're trying to do. But there are some examples and some times where it makes more sense to do the underline in the middle of the boxes, and I will show you right now. Here we have a debt tracker that I've created. And in this case, I've chosen to go with something more simple where you just have the underlines and the columns are created by these gaps here, okay? So in this case, it makes a little more sense to use the underline method because you are left with these gaps. If you have, say, a table, let's go back, a table with multiple lines, if I were to just get rid of, let's say I have these three and I just get rid of the middle lines here, let's just get rid of those, you will notice that it's just straight across lines. There's no gap between. So that's just one line all the way across. So in our example for the debt tracker here, it makes more sense to have the underline option versus just having these strokes on the table, because you wouldn't be able to create something that looks like this in that way. The only way you could do it in that case would to be create separate tables and then just space them out the way you want to space them out. So really it's all about your application as to which method you would choose. All right, so let's hit W again so we can see all of our outlines. And now that we've created our notes section and our calendar, we want to add some text box up top in order to add the month, and we'll add some notes here and maybe the year. So what I like to do, let's go down to text box here, and then we want to click and drag a box. So even if I just wanted something in the center, I find it much easier to line this up and make the box, you know, the width of your page here, because that just makes it easier to center it. Because all you're needing to do at this point is to center your text. You're not having to try to line the box up with what's underneath. That's if you're going to be creating, centering this over the whole thing. But for this case, I'm actually not going to be centering it across. So we're just going to go ahead and undo that. And then we're going to add just our text box over here in the corner. So I want to go ahead and I want to say January, and I'm going to say 2023. Okay, let's go ahead and let's highlight these, and we're going to center them in the box. And we're going to make this a much bigger font, fill in the space a little bit, and we can change our font to something else. We'll change it to that, and here, and that's basically it. We now have our January entered over here, and now we want to add another text box over here. You can go ahead and add a new text box. Again, if you use the box centered over the area that you want, as large as the area you want, it's going to be centered as long as you just click center. So let's go ahead and say notes. Let's change this to a different one. Maybe we want it to be fancy. Let's make the text much bigger. That's too big. Okay. Maybe we want to move that down a little bit. But maybe I want to make sure these are lined. If you want to make sure these are lined up and these are centered with each other, you would click one, click the other, click this one again, whichever one that you want to be your key object. Clicking on it again creates it as the key object. So whatever you're doing, if you're centering it, aligning it straight or bottom or right, it's going to make sure it's aligned to the key selected object. When you come over here to align, you're going to click on this here, and you're going to make sure key object is selected. Here is where you can change if you're centering something to the margins or to the page. And now I just want to make sure that these are centered to each other. That way they're level across. And now we have our notes page. Let's hit W and see what it looks like. Okay, this is starting to look good. Now we want to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to add shapes, which we've actually already done when we created our background and our tabs. But I'm going to show you an example here of how you can use a shape, and later I will show you how we could turn it into a button. And I also want to show you what frames are, because if you see these two differences, this is a rectangle, this is a rectangle, but this is a rectangle frame. So when you use this, it's really just a placeholder. It's not going to show up in your printed version, okay? So when you might want to use this is if you wanted to create a placeholder. Let's say, later down the road, you want to add a graphic here and you create this little text box so that you could actually just bring the graphic right into the text box and it will be, the size you planned it, and you can use it that way as a placeholder. The other way we're going to use it, which is how I use it most often, is going to be later when we get into hyperlinks. So in that case, if I wanted January to be clickable, let's say we were on another page and we wanted January to bring us back to the month, but maybe I wanted 2023 to bring us to a different year, we could do that by creating these frames over top of each of these. And then we can add hyperlinks to each of these frames. So when you actually see we hit W to see the version that gets exported, you can't see those boxes. So let's add a rectangle. We're gonna add a shape here. And I'm gonna make just like a little button that we can create to take us over to the monthly dashboard. So let's go ahead, let's fill that with a color. Maybe fill it with this color, a nice light color. Maybe I want to bring the corners in because I like to round my corners. Let's go ahead and do that. Just round them a little bit. Let's go ahead and move this over here. And now we're gonna add a text box to here saying dashboard. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna, make this a bit bigger. Let's change the font. Now we gotta make it smaller. Change the font first because some fonts come out bigger than others. Let's just center that over here. Okay, we like the way that worked, the way that looks. Later on, we're going to turn this into a button using a hyperlink. Just make sure that you don't group these two items. I'm going to talk about this later with the hyperlinks, but GoodNotes does not work well with grouped items and hyperlinks. It will show like it works in your PDF, everything will look fine, and then when it's brought into GoodNotes, the hyperlink will not work if it is attached to anything that's grouped. So I always try to make sure that things are not grouped. Just leave them as layers on top of each other is fine. Now let's see what we can do with this shape. We can go up here, we could change the color. Let's change it to pink. I think I like the pink. We can add a stroke to the box. If you wanted to do that, you would just come here. You can maybe add a black stroke to it. We can change the size of the stroke, and we can add a drop shadow by right clicking, effects, drop shadow. Move this out of the way. Let's make the distance a little smaller just to give it a little something where it looks like a button actually coming off of the page. And I don't really like the stroke, so let's get rid of that. And the drop shadow looks cute. So now it looks like maybe an actual button. There's tons you can do with shapes and text, so just play around with it and see what you like. Okay, so now that we have our calendar view looking pretty good, I want to talk to you a little bit about paragraph, character, and table styles, because really this is where the magic happens in InDesign. What makes it so great is any editing changes or updates later are really a breeze. It also helps during the creation process because you'll not have to remember what font size and color, etc. that you're using for different things, like say our table headings or our page headings and things like that. What it allows you to do is to set and save certain characteristics to be applied and changed all at once. But first I want to show you the difference between paragraph styles and character styles because they're really quite similar. And the best thing to do is show you some examples. So let's go down here and I'm going to add another page and I'm going to create some text for you. And let's go ahead and make this a much bigger font so you can actually read it. So we're going to make this a bigger font. So to access your styles, you're going to go up to Windows. And you're going to come down here to styles and then you're going to select paragraph, character, cell styles. There's tons of different styles you can have, but these are quite similar. So the big difference between paragraph styles and character styles is paragraph styles are going to actually have more information as how you set up paragraphs, where the character styles are going to have things like colors and fonts and font sizes and things like that. And also when you're using paragraph styles, you just have to be clicked and have your cursor in the paragraph anywhere. And it's going to automatically, when you click the style, change the entire paragraph to that style. Whereas in character styles, that won't work. You're going to actually have to have whatever words or letters or characters that you want to change have to be selected. And then you can go ahead and click your character style and it will apply it just to the style. Considering what this type of application is, we're creating planners, you're really not going to have paragraphs in here unless you're doing a different type of journal and you have sections where you want to explain things. For the most part, you're just going to have headings. So it's not going to matter really which one that you used. So let's head back over to our monthly page here. And let's show you how you can go ahead and apply some character styles. So let's change this January font. Maybe I don't really like that so much. I tend to really like this one. Let's go ahead and change that. And now we want maybe every header to look like this. We just want it on this font, this size, this color. So highlight what the style that you want to save. You're going to come over here to your character styles panel and you're going to click the plus here, which is going to add a new character style. And you see it added it down here. If you want to change the style, you can go ahead and double click it and now you can change the name. I'm going to say page headers. I'm going to put an X so don't get it confused with mine. And you can go ahead and click OK. And now you see you have your style here. So if I wanted to come over here and I wanted to change this notes to this style, all you would do is you would highlight what you want to change and then you're going to click page headers and it's going to automatically match that style. And this is going to make things a lot easier down the road. Every page you create, you can go ahead and apply this style and you won't need to remember what font or what size or anything along those lines that you were supposed to apply to each. So let me just show you how you would go ahead and you would change that style. So let's say I changed my mind. I want to change this font. I want to make it pink. Maybe I want to add a little stroke to it, make it stand out a little more. Okay, and now what I can do, that I've changed this and this is already applied to a style, you'll see over here there's a little plus sign. And what that means is that a style was applied to this, but you've now made modifications to it. So let's say I now want this to be the style, and so everything else connected to this style, I want everything to look the same as these. So when you come over here and you're gonna right click on your style, and then you are gonna click redefine style. And when you do that, watch what happens over here to this text. that was also applied to this style when I click redefine. It's now going to match the style. And that is the beauty of creating character styles. So imagine you have 900 pages here created and you want to change anything. You want to change them all to a different font, to a different color. It's just one click away. Besides paragraph and character styles, if we come back over here to styles, you will see there's also cell styles. That's for these within here. There's table styles for the whole table. And they're all basically going to work the same way as a character and paragraph styles, but they're going to work for your attributes, for your tables or your cells. So if you plan to make multiple tables the same and you want to go ahead, you would just do the same process, highlight what it is you're wanting to save, if it's these cell options, and then you would go over to your windows, because apparently I closed mine, your windows, your styles, your cell styles. You would do this in the same manner. You would go ahead and you would click your plus and create a new style and name your style, and now you can apply it in the same way that you do the paragraph and character styles. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you is, let's just go over how to create a vertical weekly layout. I'm going to come over here to my parent pages and right behind here, and I'm going to go ahead and click plus to add a new parent page. We're going to right click, parent options. We are going to change this. Let's change it to B, and let's change it to vertical weekly layout, and we're going to apply our planner background page. And here we go, we're all ready with our background. Okay, so the first thing I want to add here is we want to add a table. We want the table to be 3 rows and 1 column. So let's go ahead and we're going to start with this side. We're going to create a table, and we have 3 rows and 1 column, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a box about the height that I want. The width doesn't matter so much at this point because we're going to go ahead and resize it. Now we're going to come over here and we are going to make copies like we did before by holding Alt and Shift, clicking and dragging. Sometimes InDesign's a little slow and you can't see where the old box went to, so I usually just undo and then try again because I want to make sure I line these up. That looks good to me. I'm going to have a little bit of a gap there. This is all in preference. And so now we're going to do like before. We need 2 more. So we're going to go over to edit with this still highlighted. Go to edit, step and repeat, and we're going to repeat it 2 times. And then click OK. So now you can see our boxes are here and perfectly spaced, but they're too big for the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all. We're going to hold Control with our little cursor over the node here to where we get the double arrow. Click and drag over, and it's till we have it to the edge where we want it to be. And now we have our evenly spaced columns. And now we need to get them over here because these are our last 4 days of the week. So we want to copy and paste these over here. Hold Alt, hold Shift, click down and drag until we're back over here where we want to be, about centered in the page. And then let go. And now we have all of our vertical columns. Of course, we don't need this one. This is where we're going to put a notes page, so we can just delete that. And now we have all of our weekdays. Now here's where I'm going to create those text boxes that are the same width as these. It helps us to center it over there a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and drag a text box for that width. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write Sunday. All right, so now that we have that in there, let's go ahead and let's make this the size and the font and everything else that we want. And I want to show you one other thing about the text box, because while you can click here to center it horizontally, when you have a text box like this, there's no option up top to center it in the text box. You can resize the text box to fit the font, and you can move it where you want to move it. But The problem with that is if I then go and I change the font later, and let's say I want this to be a bigger font, and oops, what happened? It disappeared. Well, the font, the word itself is bigger than what will fit in this text box. And so that can create a problem down the road when you want to go, say, use these character styles and you want to change the font and maybe the font's a little bit bigger and then all of a sudden it doesn't fit, and you may not even know that you have spots throughout your planner that words just disappeared. So to be on the safe side, it's really better to just have the box much bigger, nice and big there like this, and center that again. And then what you can do to make sure it's centered here, or maybe it's down a little farther, is you can right click and we'll go to text frame options, because that's what that is, the text frame. And now from here, you can come down to vertical justification and you can center it. Let's make sure preview selected. You can make it on the bottom if you prefer to do it that way, and line it up on the bottom where you want and have the extra space up top, but that's completely up to you. I usually tend to just center it. You really want to have a little extra space just in case you want to change something later. So let's go ahead and we're gonna make this a little bit bigger. Let's change the font to what we want it to be. Should pick something like that. And we have a Sunday fun day. Okay, so now that we have the font what we need it to be, we're gonna copy and paste this, but let's first go ahead and make a character style. We're gonna go down to styles and character, and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add a character style, and we're gonna rename this, and we are gonna say weekly day header. Whatever you want to name it, just so that you remember what it is later. So now at this point, we're just going to copy and paste by Alt, Shift, and drag. And we're going to copy and paste all of these day headers, and see when you have that text box the right size, it's very easy to make sure you're centering it over each. Okay, now we have the days of the week. Now we want to go ahead and we want to add our little notes box over here. So we're going to do like we did before, and we're going to add create a table, and we're going to start with one column, and I believe we started with 25 rows. Click OK. We're going to drag our little box out to where we want it. Okay, there's our lines. We're going to highlight everything, and we are going to go to our cell options, rows and columns, and we are going to make these 7 millimeters. This also helps to make sure you're consistent across the board. Okay, we need one more, maybe not. Do we need one more row? Let's add one more row. We're going to click down here, we're going to hit tab. And now this is one of the things I was talking about before. Because we hit tab and there was not enough room, you didn't see anything happen because it's behind this text box. And you know this because this little red plus sign in a box here will indicate there's more not showing. So if we just drag this out a little bit, here we go. See, the box is gone and we can see our line now. Even, and now we want to go and we want to get rid of those side lines, so we're going to make sure just the sides are selected, and we're going to say no stroke. I do want to show you one other thing that's really helpful. If I go back to, say, our calendar view here, let's say I wanted this to be in the same exact spot on the next page. What you can do is you click on here and you're going to click copy, so you're going to go to edit copy. And then when we go down to here, back to our page here, where is our page here? Okay, we're gonna go to edit and we're gonna go to paste in place. And this is gonna paste it in the exact same spot of the page from the first page. That, believe me, will make things a lot easier for you. Make sure you jot that note down. But I'm actually going to move this around a little bit. Let's go ahead and move that around. And I like that there. I want to show you how you can create a little table up top for priorities. Let's add like a priorities section here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to add another table. And this time I'm going to just do it. Let's do the top 3 priorities. So we're going to do 3 rows and I just need 1 column. So let's click OK. And I am going to make this, let's make it big enough where we can actually write. Maybe we want to make it a little bit narrower so that we have room for a little title up top. Let's move that down. And what I want to do here is let's get rid of the top line. Let's keep the top line. Okay, so let's get rid of the sides. That's what we want to get rid of. We still have the sides selected, so we're going to go ahead and say 0. Okay, and now we're just left with the lines. If we hit W, we see what that looks like. I'm going to add a text box here. Let's center this. Let's just say priorities. Okay, we want that to be centered. Let's go down. We're going to right click, text frame options, and we're going to make that centered in the box. Hit OK. Let's make the font a little bigger. Actually, let's go ahead and let's apply a character style. Let's apply our character style of weekday headers here. Perfect. And now what I want to do is just add some little circles in. So if you want to see if any of these tools on the side and you notice that there's this little teeny tiny, I don't know if you can see it, but little teeny tiny arrow in the corner, that means there's more options there. So if you click and hold, it's going to show you the other options and you can go ahead and select one of the others. In this case, we have an ellipse tool. I just want to draw a little circle. If you want to keep it a perfect circle, just hold the shift. And now I want to have a stroke on that one. I don't want, let's do it gray. I don't know why I like the gray better, but I always do. Okay, so now we have a little circle here. Let's see what that looks like. And we can have it there, and that way you can do a little check mark for your priorities. I'm going to copy it by shift, hold, drag. Shift, hold, drag. There we go. We have a nice little priorities section there. If you don't like the line on the top and you want to get rid of that, again, just highlight. Make sure only that top line is selected and highlighted in blue. And you can say 0 and you can get rid of that top line. And then here it is without the line on top. Now I think I'm going to use this table and I'm going to make a habits section over here. Let's go. Let's bring this over here. Let's go ahead and drag this out. Oops. Maybe I want only the table selected. Let's drag it out. Let's drag the actual table out. There we go. We want enough room. Let's drag this text box out here. It should go ahead and center it over that. Okay, I want to select these and drag them over, but this box is giving me a little bit of a hard time. So what I'm going to do is with this box selected, I'm going to come over to layers. I'm going to find my selected layer and I'm going to hit right here where you see an empty box, and that is the lock. And that's going to make it so that I can't move that around and it no longer gets in my way. So I should be able to now select these guys and move them over. I'm going to hold the shift so they stay straight over the way I want them. Okay, and now I'm going to make a copy by hold shift and drag. Yeah, really being a pain. Hold shift and drag them over. So I have another set, and now I want 7 because this is going to be a habit tracker. So I'm going to do step and repeat 5 times. So edit, step and repeat. We're going to make this 5 so that we have a total of 7. I'm going to hit OK, and there we go. We have our little boxes for our habits, and then we're just going to change this to habits. And now we have our little habit tracker at the top. And there you have it, just a basic vertical layout. And now what you're going to want to do is continue to create all of the pages that you desire for it to have within your planner. And creating a parent page for each will make creating the planner layout itself a lot easier later. There's no limit to the number of parent pages you can have, so create as many as you would like. I usually make a parent page for all my different layouts, even if I may only use them once. This way it's easier if you want to create a new planner from this planner and you want to maybe exclude certain things. It's just easier to have a parent page for everything. Now I'm going to show you how to actually create the planner now that we've created these planner pages, and this part is super easy. Okay, I'm just going to delete this one. And down here, as I said, is our actual planner layout. We already have our cover here. So to create a new page, you can hit the plus, but it's just going to recreate the last page that you had selected. So if you want to choose which page you're going to create, you want to right click in here and say insert pages. And now you're going to come up with this box where you can say the number of the page that you want, the number of pages that you want to add, and then you can also select before or after the page number. We only have one, so it's not going to let you change it. And now here's where we want to select our parent page. So let's say we want to have our monthly planner first. That's parent. I forgot to change that name. And we can say go ahead and we add our monthly planner, and now it has added it down here. You will not be able to change anything on this because the parent page is applied. Let's go ahead and we want to add in, let's add our weekly layouts. So again, we're going to right click in here, insert pages, and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we want to add 6 weekly vertical pages for January. So just click, just change this to 6, and we want to go ahead and we want to change our parent page to vertical weekly. Click OK, and now we have 6 weeks, 6 pages of our vertical weekly page. Okay, so those are all our January pages. Now let's say we come to the end here and we want to add another monthly page for February. So again, we're going to say insert pages. The page is going to go after 8, which is the one we have selected, and we're going to go back and we're going to apply our next month page. And now what we're going to want to do is we're going to have to update or change certain things. We're going to have to change our dates if this is a dated planner, and we're going to have to change our month here. And so the next thing you need to know is how you can go ahead and override one of these parent pages. There is an option to go in here and you can override all parent items. I really suggest that you do not do that. Once you do, any updates made to your parent page here are not going to be reflected on any pages that you've overridden. Same is going to go for hyperlinks. When we add hyperlinks for these tabs to the parent page, if you override this page, none of those links are going to be there anymore. So instead of doing it that way, what you will need to do is, this is the object that we want to change. You're going to hold Control and Shift, and you're going to click on the object. And that's now going to allow you to edit this object. So now we can go in and we can change this to February and click OK. And now we have our new one. You're going to do the same thing here. Hold Shift, Control, and click. And now we can edit our days here. But you don't want to override any of these tabs here. Really, really important. Also the coil, if you choose to link the coil to the cover, which I do, and I know a lot of other people do when they design these planners. You don't want to override that as well. So now you can go in here and you can change anything you want to change. But just keep in mind, anything you change to the parent page is not going to change here. So if for some reason you wanted to change the whole layout of this table in your parent page, it's not going to change it here. That's the other reason why we have our character styles. Because if these are all attached to a character style or a table style, you can make your changes through that and it's going to change to everything, no matter if it's linked to a parent page or not. Another thing to note when adding your pages to your planner is you really want to decide what order you want to have the pages in. Some people will group them by types of page, so maybe all the monthly pages will be together one after the other, and then all the weekly, or you can choose to do it to where it swipes through like a regular planner. So you, like I just set up here, so you would have your monthly page and then weekly pages behind that. And then if you have daily pages, they might be behind each week. You have your 7 daily pages, your week, your 7 daily pages until you get to your new month. This is up to you. It depends on the type of planner and your preference as to how you want those things to be set up. But you want to decide on that before you start adding all of your pages to here. If you do decide you put something in the wrong order and you want to move it, you're just going to come over, click in here somewhere, and right click, and you can click Move Pages. And then here is the same kind of setup as inserting. You're going to say what page you want to move, or pages. You can do a range of pages, and then where you want those pages to go throughout your document, and click OK, and it will move those pages to where you need them to be. Now the only thing we have left to do is to add hyperlinks. This is what makes the digital planner so special and easy to navigate. You can make a simple swipe through with either no hyperlinks or very limited hyperlinks if you choose to. However, customers expect clickable hyperlinks in their digital planner. It's probably why they're using it as opposed to a paper planner. My solution is to create all of the hyperlinks, but also create the pages in order so that the customer is able to use it in whichever way they choose to. So the first place you're going to want to add hyperlinks is to your parent page. For your background, the one with your tabs, because any hyperlinks that are applied to parent pages are going to show up on every page within your document that parent page is applied to, unless you override it like I discussed before. So we know that every single page is going to have these tabs, that every single page is going to have this coil. So if we want hyperlinks on here, we don't want to have to add them to every single page in the document. So you just add it to the parent page. Now you can click on an item, say a box like these boxes, and you can add a hyperlink right to that. And how you would do that is with it highlighted, you're going to right click, you're going to come down to hyperlink, and you're going to say add a new hyperlink. However, I highly suggest instead of doing that, you create frames with the frame tool and add the hyperlink to that. And reason being is what I said earlier about GoodNotes having an issue with anything grouped together. You can make sure that those things are not grouped, but to ensure that you don't have an issue, adding a rectangle frame is the best way to do that. So it's pretty simple. You're going to come over here, you're going to click on this frame tool, and then you are just going to make a frame over the area that you want to be clickable. It's an invisible frame, no one's going to see it, and then you right click, and then we're going to go to hyperlink and add a new hyperlink. The default that comes up is URL, and this is how you can create the hyperlink to a website, to any kind of URL that you want. But for the purposes of this planner, we don't really want to do that. What we want to do is come down and we want to change it to page, because we want this to take us to a particular page. Now keep in mind, you have to have all of your planner situated so that you know which page you need to go to. We have to go back here and look and see what page number are we at for our January calendar. That's where we want January to go to, and that is page 2. So when we come back over here, we come back over here and make sure we're on the selection tool, and we go ahead and right click and we choose hyperlink, and we want this to be page and we want to make sure that we're in this document. You can add hyperlinks to pages in different documents, but that's definitely not what we want. But this should be the default. But you want to go ahead here, and that's what's important, is you want to say page 2. That's where you want this hyperlink to go, is page 2. And down here is just about the appearance. I don't usually mess with that. I want it to be invisible. We have an invisible rectangle, but if you want to be able to show people, hey, this is a link, you can change that down there. But we're going to leave that as is for now, and we're just going to click OK. And now you know you've added a hyperlink because you can see this dashed line box around here. And now let's go ahead and let's add a hyperlink to this coil. Again, we're going to choose our text frame. We're going to go ahead and we're going to highlight around it, create the box around it. We're going to right click, come down to hyperlinks, new hyperlink, and we want this to be the cover, which is page 1. So we're going to leave it as page 1 and then click OK. And now you see the box. And so you would just continue to do that, finding the page in your document that you want this tab to go to, the hyperlink to go to, and then creating the same process. Now, when you go to any of the pages in your document, you're going to see those hyperlinks are on all of those pages, and you do not need to go and add them to every page. Now, as far as hyperlinks that you may want to add within your project, within the document itself, say this dashboard. We don't actually have a dashboard page in here, but if I wanted to make this a button, simply go over here, add the box, right click, hyperlink, new hyperlink, and then add the page that I want it to go to. It's as simple as that. And one side note, that if you go after you've added these hyperlinks and you have, I need to add a page here, or I need to delete this page and I need to move this around, all of those hyperlinks should adjust accordingly. You won't have to go back and redo them all. They will adjust depending on what you've made. So if I linked something to page 5 and I delete page 4, this now becomes page 4. That hyperlink will automatically change. But if I do need to change a hyperlink, our background here, we're going to click on our hyperlink box and we are going to right click. And when we come down to hyperlink this time, we're going to not have the option to add a new hyperlink. We're going to have one to edit or to go to the destination. And if you click edit, you get the same box. You just change the page, click OK, and it will change the hyperlink. And the one last thing that I want to bring up is, in some cases, you may break hyperlinks. If you had a hyperlink, now I said if I have a hyperlink on to 5 and I delete 4, it will adjust it. But what happens if I had a hyperlink that was connected to 4 to the page that I actually deleted? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this hyperlink to page 4. Let's change this to 4. Okay. And in order to see hyperlinks, you go up to Windows, Interactive, and Hyperlinks. And it's going to show you your hyperlinks here. This little red flag here indicates that there's something wrong. There's a broken hyperlink. That's what you're going to see if I delete the page that the hyperlink goes to, because it's no longer there. So all you need to do, and I suggest doing this at the end before you export, is just to make sure that you don't have anything missing, is to bring up this little box. And anytime you see one of these red flags, you can go ahead and you can click the source and it will bring you to the source that's missing the hyperlink. And you can then fix it. And I would just go through and make sure that you don't have any of these red flags before you're ready to export. And that's it. You've now added everything that you need to add. We have our pages, we have our hyperlinks. We're completely organized so that this is the only one that we have to spend this much time on. Going forward, you can make adjustments very, very easily. And the only thing left to do is to export. So when you're all set, that you're just going to go to File and you're going to go down to Export. And it's going to bring up your box here. And what you want to make sure you're exporting as is an interactive PDF. You're going to have two options. There's a print PDF and an interactive one. The print one will not come with the hyperlink, so it will be basically useless. So you want to make sure it's interactive, pick where you want it, title what you want it to be, and hit save, and then you'll get this dialog box here. We don't have spreads. You're not going to have spreads. You're going to do it as pages. That's how you set up your document, so that should be automatic. If you didn't want to export all of the pages, let's say you just wanted to export a few for some reason, maybe you're just testing some things out, you can click range and you can select a range here. Separate PDFs you don't want to do, that's going to have a separate file for every single page you have in here, so you just want to make sure that's not checked. And everything else should pretty much be default, but if you want to just look at what is selected here, you can do that. You just hit export. If you get anything like this, something was over something else, don't worry about it, just click OK. Sometimes it has to do with the text, and there you go. It should bring up your digital planner and you're good to go. I would then pull it in. You should be able to test it out and they should be clickable in your PDF like this, but I still would suggest go ahead and bringing it into your GoodNotes and testing it out and just playing around and making sure everything works. In a planner this size, you're going to end up with a lot of hyperlinks in the end, and it's definitely easy to mess them up. I have done it myself and had to go back and fix them. So just play around and make sure everything works. And as long as everything works, you should be good to go. If you need to fix something, you can just go and fix it and then export it all over again. So that's it. We've now just created a digital planner. And the nice thing about the way we did create it is now we can go back and we can create tons and tons of planners from the same planner with half the amount of work. In the next episode, we're going to start creating photos and videos for our listings so that we can get the listings up and we can get our shops open. So you don't want to miss the next episode. It's really an important one. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification, and I will see you in the next episode.